أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابة رضوان الله تعالى عليهم أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. I don't recognize any of the faces that were there last time, so unless you've done this, are you familiar with this text at all? Okay, so I feel guilty now because I don't want to go back, but what I'll do is I'll give you a synopsis. More than 1,000 years ago, have any of you been to Fez in Morocco? Yeah? Yes? Yes? You've been to Bab al-Futuh? Yes. The massive graveyard? Okay. The author is buried there. In his original stock is Spanish. He's Andalusian. They moved and settled in Fez, but they're originally Ansari, from Medina, the family. He was a master of all the sciences that you can think of, but he specialized in Qira'ah. A lot of his works on recitation of the Quran are in print. Majority of his work is not in print. He became famous for this poem, which is more than about 319 verses long. He based it on the hadith of Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam. Are you familiar with that hadith? No? Okay. I'll tell you what our scholars, it's famous as the hadith of Jibreel, but the Maliki scholars, they don't call it that. They call it Sunnah. The foundation or the mother of the Sunnah. It's literally, it lays the groundwork for the Sunnah. Now, by Sunnah doesn't mean, how long your beard is or what the Prophet ﷺ did or not. By Sunnah is meant Aqeeda. Because that was the traditional understanding of the word. Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam came, it's literally the last month of the physical life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is sitting, the Sahaba are sitting round him. This man walks in, dressed in pure white clothes, jet black hair. He's not from Medina because no one recognizes him, so he's a traveller. He walks in, comes right in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, comes sit next to him, putting his knees next to his knees. There's a wording where he even touches his knees, and he starts questioning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He asks him, our subject is three. He asks him what is Islam, so he tells him what is Islam. Asks him what is Iman, tells him what is Iman. Then asks him what is Ihsan, he tells him what is Ihsan. Then he asks him when is the end of time, the hour going to come. And the Prophet ﷺ answers back that the questioner knows as much as the questioned. And then he asks him what are the signs. So the Prophet ﷺ gives him the signs. Now this text is based on that hadith. It takes its roots are in that, because this text covers Iman, which is Aqeeda, then Islam, which is Fiqh, and Ihsan, which is tassawwuf. And it covers, the daruriyat fi deen, the knowledge that you must, every individual is obliged to know. So you know it, you act it, you get on with life. So if you don't need to become a scholar or need to know everything that you need to know, you don't need to. So Sidi Mayara wrote, Ibn Ashir, he wrote it in verse so people could memorize it. And because it's written for a Muslim environment, a Muslim country, there are certain things that are not in there. The times of prayer and so on and so forth. Because in Muslim countries you hear Maliki Fiqh. Come in. And he wrote it for the illiterate. That's what he says in the introduction. That it's written so it's of benefit to the illiterate. Now, for the last 400 plus years since it was written, in North Africa and West Africa, children, when they go and start learning to read and write, every Friday, this is what they're taught. So by the time they've learned how to read and write and know how to recite the Quran, they know the basics of their deen. And that was, the traditional way of how things were. Because the traditional syllabus for Maliki Fiqh is that you start with a verse called al-Aqida, which just deals with the Salat and other ahkam. Then you move on to this, the Matan of Ibn Ashir, with Sidi Mayara's commentary, which we're using today. Then the Risala of Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, and then you finish with the Mukhtasar of Sidi Khalil. It's a very basic syllabus. Sheikh Abdul Rahman, he was here last year. Actually, he was here this year as well. Have you heard of Murabit al-Hajj? His son, Sheikh Abdul Rahman, he lives in Granada. In Granada, if you're visiting, it's actually worth going and just looking at him or praying with him. It's a small mosque called Masjid Taqwa. It's tucked away in the Kasbah, but if you ask any of the shops, they'll tell you. And he's been there for 30 years plus. Doesn't speak a word of Spanish, and he says, I'm not going to either. But that's the syllabus. He says that's what you've got to teach. Akhdari, Ibn Ashir, Risala of Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, and then Mukhtasar of Sidi Khalil. Now, what we did just before Ramadan, we literally covered the Aqeeda. Now, the Aqeeda is just what we got to believe about God. What's an obligation to believe about God? What's possible and what's impossible from a point of belief, and then about the Prophet ﷺ, and then other bits and bobs. That's what we covered last month, and that's a section that the first 49 verses. So now we move on to we're on verse 48, but the heading is Muqaddimatu min al-Usul. I rely on the commentary, the explanation of Sidi Mayara. Now, Sidi Mayara is the student of, again, he's a Farsi scholar. A lot of his works, lot more of his works are in print than of Sidi ibn Ashir. His explanation. By the way, this is not the whole book is not his explanation. His main commentary, his Shar Kabir, is this big. This is Sidi Hamdoun's Hashia. The small Shar Saghir, or the minor commentary. He literally explains things that we need to know. A lot of the grammar I'll skip because it doesn't make sense to English speaking people. But the whole idea is we're trying to understand. So, muqaddamatu min al-usul. Usul literally comes from, roots, the asl. So this is an introduction to the roots. Now, how we're going to go through the days, we're going to follow Sidi Mayara's, what he does, he takes certain verses and then he expands on them. And that's how we're going to take them, inshallah. If you don't understand, ask. And if you don't ask, means you're not understanding, inshallah. Or unless you're very brilliant students that you understand everything, inshallah. Okay. Has anybody got an translation of this?
I've got an Arabic version, but there's a commentary.
Whose commentary is it?
Amjad al-Amrawi. I got it from first, but I don't know how reliable it is.
Okay. How good is your Arabic?
It's good.
Good? Okay. You can be our translator. Verse 48 and 49. حكمنا في شرع خطاب ربنا المقتضى فعل المكلف أفطن بطلب أو إذن أو بوضع لسبب أو شرط أو ذي منع. What's your name, by the way? Mahmoud. ترجم لنا.
I'm trying to look it up, it's not here.
Okay, it's fine. Okay, it's okay. The hukm, hukm literally means the ruling. How do we, because this, it's literally two verses in which he's trying to explain literally what, volumes have been written on. Yeah? So, hukm fi shari khitabi rabbina. Now, the rulings, first and foremost, are by the address of our sustainer, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, how, Maliki Fiqh works, it's very, very unique. I'm a student of comparative fiqh. I'd love someone to convince me of, not being a Maliki, but, 30 years down the line, we're still waiting, inshallah. But, so, Khitabu Rabbina. Now, in the Sharia, you know this word Shara? What do people understand by this word Sharia? Have a go. I don't mind anyone. Come on. Who wants to have a go? What do you understand?
I've understood it to be the path to water.
Okay, path to water. Yeah? Linguistically, yeah? What does it mean in, law? What does it mean? Because, headlines and everything, we're trying to bring in the Sharia to this country and everything else. No? We don't have a definition. If you ask a serious student of knowledge, what does Sharia mean? He'll be stuck. He'll give you, a lot of, the watering place. But what does it mean? It's easier to define fiqh than it is than to define Sharia. Because Sharia is no one, have you ever come across someone says, I'm a student of the Sharia? Have you come across anyone? You'll find students of hadith, tafsir, fiqh, tassawwuf. Rarely will you find, someone who says, I'm a student of the Sharia. Because it's difficult, to say this is what Sharia is. Yeah? But the hukm, the ruling in law, we'll take the word law. I actually prefer Dr. Umar Abdullah rahimahullah. If he ever comes to the country, follow him, please. That man's, you can't, you want to, in the English speaking world, he is the most knowledgeable man that there is. Yes.
Sorry, could you just
Dr. Umar
Farooq
Abdullah.
Abdullah. Omar Farooq Abdullah.
Yeah.
How is he from
Yeah.
Chicago?
Yeah, from Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
He was here.
He was here. He was here. Some.
Did you go?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. He says, because a lot of people translate in English, Sharia as sacred law. He translates it as prophetic law. And that's, from a fiqh point of view, is actually the correct understanding. Because the lawgiver is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. It's always the khitab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses us in the Quran. Now, our actions are judged. It's how He addresses us. He'll either demand an action from us, He'll permit an action, or there'll be a cause for an action. No, don't write the cause down.
No.
Don't write the cause down. We'll come to the cause in a minute. So either an action is sought, Allah asks you to do something, or He permits you to do something. Now, how we know this is how words are laid down. Wada. Even in English, the context of the word, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala understands it. How He's laid it down. That's how it's understood. And we're in the month of Hajj. Actually, a lot of Hajjs are. I'll give you an example. It's a Maliki bias to it, so excuse me for that. The ayah in the Quran, Allah says, "Man istata'a alayhi sabila," that whoever finds the means, to get there. So the ayah in the Quran is literally the word that makes it an obligation is istata'a, the means. Now, what happens is this ayah, it's non-conditional. It does not put a condition down that you need to have enough money, you need to have married your children off, you need to have reached a certain age, you need to have a mahram. All it says is that you need to get from A to B. Literally, you need to get from here to Mecca. You don't have to pay your debts off. Or if someone says, "Here, go," Hajj is an obligation. If your husband won't go with you, it's still an obligation upon you. Because now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not ring-fenced it. Now, in Hanafi fiqh, they make this conditional. Now, how they make it conditional, there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that a believing woman who believes in Allah on the last day should not travel without a mahram for 24 hours. You familiar? Now, that's used to make this word istata'a conditional. So there's a condition made down that a woman, Hajj is not an obligation upon a woman without a mahram. So if she doesn't have a mahram, she can't go on Hajj. This is where, I'm trying to explain this word wada'. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put the word down. you always, in Maliki Fiqh, the book comes first. All the tawatir cannot be made conditional by an ahad. Are you familiar with this word tawatir, mutawatir? Mutawatir means that it's mass transmitted. Yeah? That's the Quran is mutawatir. Majority of Sahih Hadith, majority of them are ahad, they're singular narrations. They're not, in waiting, they're not on par with the Quran. Now, the Quran can't be made conditional by an ahad. So, you always look at, first, how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala address you? So if He says this is an obligation, then that's an obligation. It can't be made conditional by a hadith. Okay. لِسَبَبٍ أَوْ شَرْطٍ أَوْ ذِي مَنَعٍ. So either there's, a condition for an obligation, or it's conditional. There's a cause, there's a condition, or there's a prohibition. Yeah? Okay. Sidi Mayara brings in this understanding of, slaughtering. Do we need to worry about slaughter if the animal doesn't exist? Or do we start thinking about how to slaughter the animal when the animal is there? Or do we need to... No? We'll only think about, if the animal is there, we'll decide if it's halal or not. If it's not there, we don't need to think about it. If the animal's there, we'll slaughter it. That might not make sense, but okay. Salatul Dhuhr. Is it an obligation now on all of us to pray? Why not?
Because it hasn't the sun's not ticked past the...
Okay, so Salatul Dhuhr is an obligation, but there's a cause to it, which is Zawal coming in. So if the time doesn't start, it's not an obligation. I remember Sidi Abdul Rahman asked me from last time, about alarms. This is the thing that, am I under obligation to put an alarm on so I'll wake up for Salatul Subh, for Fajr? Am I? Just as I'm not under obligation to pray Dhuhr before Salatul Dhuhr comes in, I'm not under obligation to put an alarm on before Salatul Subh comes in. Once Salatul Subh comes in, I'm under obligation. If Salatul Subh has not begun, the obligation has not begun. Does it make sense? Yeah? If the causes are not there, the obligation is not there. The cause for Dhuhr is Zawal. The cause for, inshallah, when we won't be able to do it today, maybe, I can't see it, but when we begin Salat, the book on Salat will cover the times. So if Subh doesn't come in, I'm not under no obligation, to put an alarm on. If you do it, it's fine. But it's not, an obligation. It's not a, when you're asleep, are you under obligation to wake up to pray? No. Is the madman under obligation to pray? No. Until he gains his senses. Yeah? Until you wake up. Once you wake up, you're under obligation to pray. If you're asleep, you're not under obligation.
Because you're not aware, basically.
No, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're out of it. So, are you under obligation to give zakat? Yes, but it's conditional. You must, first of all, have the money, an excess of 20 pieces of gold. And you must have had it kept aside for a whole year. Because Maliki is very sticklers with this. You must have had it for a whole year. So if you've not had it for a whole year, you're not under obligation to give it. By the way, I'll touch upon it inshallah when we cover zakat, but you're under obligation to give it. Not the charity that you give it to, or to anyone else. The obligation is yours. You're under obligation. So the prohibition, a woman is she, when she's in those days of the month, is she under obligation to pray? No? No?
Yeah.
What if I said she is? Because the obligation is not lifted. Someone, it's like there's something that stops her from praying. Not that the obligation has been lifted. What's the condition? Again, because we're looking at causes, conditions, and prohibitions. The condition for prayer is, we already said time needs to come in. Once the time comes in, what do you need to do? Tahara, right? So, if she's at that period of month, can she purify? So, because the condition is not being met, she can't pray. That doesn't mean that the obligation has been lifted. Does it make sense? So, when we look at the ahkam, we always look at these things. We look at the cause, we look at the conditions, and we look at the prohibitions.
Ustad, sorry, the Hajj, is that a prevention of prayer, or is it just happen to be prevention of purity and therefore she can't pray?
No, she's not prevented from. She can't purify.
Right. So it doesn't forbid her from prayer as such.
No,
It just-
she
it's
doesn't
like an
meet the
obstacle on
condition.
the way.
The condition of prayer. She's still under obligation.
Right.
The obligation of prayer. Yeah, but she can't meet the conditions of prayer. It's like someone who's disabled. Mentally, they're not. Someone who's got learning difficulties. Now, are they? No, that's a wrong example. Hold on. Someone who's drunk. It doesn't matter if it's drunk through, haram sources or halal sources, because they're not aware of what they're doing, are they under obligation to pray?
No.
Why?
Because sanity is a condition.
Sanity is a condition of obligation. Purity is a condition of prayer. Because what you find is that, we'll deal with it when we come to prayer. The conditions of prayer are always outside of prayer. The obligations are in prayer. So the condition of purity is outside of prayer. So if the condition of purity is never met, prayer can never be prayed. So the obligation, the condition of prayer for a woman for Hayd, she can't meet the condition of purity. So once she can meet the conditions of purity, she prays. It's not that the obligation of prayer is lifted. As soon as there's a sign of the period beginning, she doesn't pray because she can't fulfill the condition of prayer. Just as I always disagree with them, and I've got a lot of slack from people that they say that you've got to put an alarm on before you go to sleep, so you get up for subh. So it's not an obligation. The obligation of prayer will only kick in once I'm awake. Because when I'm asleep, the pen's lifted. That's the words of the Prophet ﷺ. Once I'm awake, yes, I should, get into a habit of waking up. And I tell you from practice, an alarm, something that works better than an alarm, is get into a habit of talking to God, and He'll wake you up on time. And it's an alarm that always works. Yeah. So you find that certain actions are sought, and certain actions that God asks you to leave. Okay? So He seeks that we pray, but He asks us to leave certain things. Okay? Now, the things that God seeks that we have faith. Now, having faith in God and His messengers and the 5 foundations, those are things that are sought by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the actions that God asks us to leave: drinking. Certain things are not, that would come under the category of haram, but there are certain categories in which is not haram, but it's makruh. For instance, reciting Quran in a ruku. This always gets to people, why can't I recite in a ruku? It's just that, when you Muslims, doesn't matter whichever hue, color, background you come from, we all esteem the word of God. Now, what do people, bowing, it's not done out of choice, is it? It's not done out of choice. It's when you're humbled. So you humble yourself in front of God, you go into ruku, which is bowing. And when you prostrate, you're being humbled even more. But in sajda is a different category. If you use, the ayats of the Quran in which there are du'as, supplications, those are fine because you're not reading them as Quran, you're using them as supplications. But in ruku, in Maliki Fiqh, it's makruh to recite Quran. Because when we recite Quran, we recite it, because we esteem, the word of God. Inshallah. So, before I move away from these, does it make sense that certain actions, there are causes for it, certain acts are conditional, and certain actions are prohibited, and those are all because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, that's how He's commanded us or addressed us. Yeah? Are we okay with that? Okay. We'll move on to verses 50, 51 and 52. These are dealing with fard, nadab, karaha and haram and mubah. We're all familiar with these. Okay. Rather than going through the verse, this is how I was taught. It's a very easy way of understanding. Fard. We use the word wajib a lot more. Now, wajib and fard are synonyms. They mean exactly the same. So the thumb is a wajib. So a wajib, there's reward for doing a wajib. Yeah. There's punishment for leaving it. That's a simple. Yeah.
Can I just get one thing clarified there? There's a reward for doing it, and often scholars have said there's a punishment for doing it. There may be a punishment for doing it, or is there definitive here? Like what is the actual position here of the ulama in regards to that?
For wajib?
Yes. So, of course, I understand that. Look, you get a reward for doing it. There's a punishment.
Yeah.
Is it definitively that you're going to get punishment? Is that a condition as well? That you may be punished? Does that need to
right? Punished. Right. By punished, we mean not in this life.
Okay.
If you mean that you're going to get punished in this life, Islamic states, you can go and read our history. We didn't punish people for not praying. That was not the affair of a state to go into what you did in your personal life. The affair of a state was it looked after justice. There's a classic incident where Imam Malik radiallahu anh, he didn't used to dye his beard. His beard used to be white. He was blonde and blue-eyed. Yeah, he was blonde and he had blue eyes, and his hair went white, and he never dyed it. So the governor stopped him, one day, and said, "Why don't you dye your beard?" And Imam Malik smiled and asked him, "Is that what's left of your justice?" that you're worried about the colour of my beard. Yeah? The job of state is not to look into, the practice of individuals. Now, it's the job of state to make sure that the signs of Islam are established. The adhan is there, the jami is there, that the jama'ats are established in the mosques. Now, if people deny the obligation, the obligation of a wajib, and they make a fuss about it, they make it public and make it well known, then it'll end up in front of a qadi if there's an Islamic state. But for instance, knowing it's an obligation to believe in God. Is the state going to punish me for not believing in God? If I don't say it, if I don't declare it? No. So a wajib, there's a reward, and we're talking about ibadat. We're not talking about, because this is daruriyat fi deen. We're dealing with the ibadat, that are obligations. So those ibadat, it's an obligation. You're under obligation. You're obliged by God to do those acts of worship. It's up to God if He will punish you. Is that what you wanted?
That's what I wanted to.
Okay. It's up to God. I can't say that, you're going to get punished for it, because I don't have the knowledge. It's up to God, on that day, if He'll punish you or not punish you. Before we move away from this, there's this hadith called Bataqa. Mahmoud, how do you translate Bataqa?
Stuff as an ID.
Yeah. I know now it's used as an ID, but classically it was just a slither of paper, because they use cards. An ID card is a bataq, and your personal card is a bataq. But the hadith al-bataqa is literally about a slither of paper. On that day, on the last day, the emissary of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells of a man who is in front of God, and every record of his is opened, and there's no good in it, not one. And the understanding of scales, that everything's weighed. So in the explanations they say that there's no space left to put a scroll of his records. Everything is open, and it's all against him, and there's nothing good in the other scale. And so the angels are ready to take him to the other place. And then this voice comes, wait, he's got one good, I've got something good of his. And this slither of a paper comes flying, and it ends up in the scale, and that small slither weighs out all the bad that he's done in his life. And on that piece of paper was the creed, the declaration of there's no God but God, which is an obligation. We're under obligation once in our life, with the intent to say that I'm fulfilling the obligation to say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So no, if people say yes, we have the text that you're going to get punished, but on that day it's up to God. Yeah. So clear cut obligation. You're wajib, fard. We're under obligation to believe, do. You'll get rewarded for doing it. You'll get punished for leaving it. The next is this word nadab. The author uses the word nadab, which is another word for mandub. And here's another word for mustahab. You familiar with this word? Okay. Means recommended. There's a reward for doing those actions. There's no punishment for leaving them. Makruh or karaha, there's a reward for leaving them. There's no punishment for doing them. Makruh actions. Haram, there's a reward for leaving them, and there's a punishment for doing them. Mubah is a neutral, where it goes both ways. There's no punishment, there's no reward. All the ahkam, the classical understanding of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is everything is mubah unless it's made haram. Okay. Now, the first two are the ones that you should always find yourself in fard and mandub. Never find yourself in makruh, mubah or haram. As in a grade of things, even makruh is from the halal. Makruh is not from haram. So if something is graded as makruh, if you do it, you're not doing haram. So wajib or fard would be, iman in God, His Messenger, and the 5 foundations of Islam. Those would be the wajibat. The mandub would be, the 2 rakats of Malikis are quite, they'll within Sunnis, they're the odd one out. Our terminology doesn't stick with them, doesn't go in line with the Hanafi, Shafis and Hanbalis. The 2 rakats before Salatul Subh, the morning prayer, everyone else calls the obligatory 2 rakats Fajr. We call it Subh. And the 2 rakats before, the optional 2 rakats, we call them Fajr. Yeah? So those 2 rakats are mandub. They actually have when we get to the section of prayer, we'll talk more about it, because it has a special category of itself.
Sheikh, can I just get one thing clarified?
Yeah.
That's in regards to those 2, you call that subh.
Yeah.
And it's not fajr. Is that the only case? What about the other? I know you're going to go into the other prayers.
Yeah.
But just generally, is that something which pops up again? Like, is that the case with the Ashir, let's just say?
No, the names of the 5.
That just happens.
No, the names of the prayers, the obligatory prayers, no one can change it.
Okay, so why is it called subh?
Subh is Salatul Subh is Subh.
Yeah, I know it's like
It's Subh.
But why is it that different? Are you saying why?
No, because what you've got to understand is that how Medinan fiqh comes about is that we don't come up with anything. The jurists or the scholars did not come up with anything. We take what the prophetic model was, and you'll find that sub is what it was. We've already covered that, makruh, like, the 2 rak'ahs. Reciting in ruku. Also with the Malikiyya, the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in Fard prayer, the ta'awudh, or the dua before the qiraat, folding your hands in the Fard prayer, they're all makruh for us. The haram, like drinking and so on and so forth. Okay. The next verse, this actually will clarify, what we meant by nadab. Nadab. 53, verse 53. Fard والفرض قسمان كفاية وعين ويشمل المندوب سنة بهذين. That fard is divided into two. There's the individual obligation, and then there's the communal obligation. Fardul Ain and Fardul Kifaya. Fardul Ain would be, the belief in God, knowing, the personal obligatory knowledge, the 5 prayers and so on and so forth. The Fardul Kifaya, usually, what Sidi Mayara has brought forward, the Salatul Janazah, everything else that's associated with it. For instance, politics is Fardul Kifaya. Knowing, making sure that we have scholarship within the deen, that is Fardul Kifaya. Becoming a doctor is Fardul Kifaya. Yeah. Those are not, Fardul Ain. The mandub, in it is incorporated sunnah. We don't have, the word mandub literally means voluntary or extra, supererogatory. So every act of worship that is not an obligation is a supererogatory act of worship. Yeah. Now, in Arabic there are so many words for supererogatory actions. There's tassawwuf, there's mandub, there's mustahab, yeah, there's sunnah. Then the sunnah gets divided into muakkada or ghayr muakkada. But all of them come under the umbrella of supererogatory. They're extra. So the madhab doesn't have of course Sunnah has a category, but it comes under the category of extra. Does that make sense? No?
So we're saying that that this mandub category,
yes,
gets subdivided.
Yes, gets subdivided. Right. So mandub literally means recommended. So in the recommended actions of acts of worship, there's sunnah. Yeah. Then the sunnah gets divided into ayn and kifaya. Yeah. There's sunnah which is an individual should do. There's sunnah that which are communal things. Yeah. Then if you look at the prayers, there's prayers that are sunnah, and there are we actually only divide them into sunnah mu'akkada, the prayers. You have the fard prayer, and then you have the sunnah mu'akkada prayer, and the rest are nafil, mandub, which are either stressed upon or not stressed upon. You'll have to wait till we get to the book of prayer, inshallah. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's in the recommended mustahab, mandub, mustahab, sunnah mu'akkada. They all come under the subcategories. Yes.
So with in Hanafi madhab it's
wajib, yes.
In Maliki, what does it?
Right. In Hanafi fiqh, 3 rak'ats are wajib. Yeah. In Maliki fiqh, 1 rak'at is sunnah mu'akkada.
Oh, okay.
1 rak'at. So out of 24, within 24 hours, apart from the wajib salat, which are 5, you only have 1 rak'at, which is sunnah mu'akkada. Yeah. But we never pray it on its own as 1 rak'at. There's always 2 rak'ats before, which are called shaf, even. Yeah, inshallah. Are we okay with them? Yeah. Are there any questions on this? Because we're done with this. As I said, it's a very small introduction to usul. Usul is literally a sea. Inshallah, maybe in the future we could do some. We only have 14 points of usul, but you need quite a lot more time than this. Are we okay with this? Yeah? Okay. We move on to, the book of Tahara. Now, I'll tell you my understanding before we move on to this, and it'll make sense. When you go and meet someone important, or when you're going for a job interview, or for uni or whatever interview, you want to get that. What do you do?
Wear your best suit.
Pardon?
Wear your best suit.
Wear your best suit. But before you wear your suit, what do you do? Prepare. How do you prepare?
Take a shower.
Pardon?
You revise.
You revise. Yeah. How you're going to present yourself. So you've got your mind right. Then you make sure that you don't smell. Yeah. You take a shower. Yeah. And that's just because you're going to for a job interview or uni or whatever. Now, with prayer, we're literally going to stand in front of God. So this is what you've got to understand, because what we've dealt with Aqeeda was you're getting your mind right. Yeah. With what we just did, this is make sure that we know what we're doing, and what category it falls in. Now, with purification, is literally we're having the shower, making sure that our body is clean, our clothes are clean. So our mouth is clean, we don't smell. It's like when we how many times do we smell our voice? Does our mouth smell when we're going to talk to someone? We use mints, we use God knows what, mouthwash. But this is we've got to get into, the mindset is exactly the same. You're talking to someone. Yeah? You're talking to someone. So just as when you get really close to someone, if their breath smells, they'll step back. Yeah? If your body odor or whatever, they'll step further back. And this book of purification, tahara, literally this tahara is to do with the physical. It's not to do. The end of this text will deal with the purification of the heart, but we are literally, that's what we're going to look at. The reason why is because we're going to present ourselves in front of God. Yeah? Inshallah. Now, these are how Sidi Mayara divides it. He begins with verse 45, 40, 44, 45, 46. So, what we're looking at is what we are going to clean ourselves with. It's like, when you go to the shower, you use certain products. You've got your own, things that you like. You make sure that, this is the right thing. This is the thing that's going to put me into the right state of mind. It's going to clean me proper. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made sure that, when you are going to come into my presence, I want you to purify yourself with this and only this, because nothing else will clean. Now, what the madhab looks, what the Sharia has looked at, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid down, He's laid down that, there's one thing, and that thing is the only thing that will clean, is water. But it's got to be water in its original, pure sense. The word that's used is ma' al-mutlaq. Mutlaq is absolute. So water is the thing that. So وتحصل الطهارة بماء من تغير بشيء سلما إذا تغير بنجس طرح أو طاهر لعادة قد صلح إلا إذا لازم في الغالب كمغرة مطلق كالذائب. Now what you've got is that water, how the madhab understands it, and this is something unique that the other madhabs don't share with us, is that we do not believe that water ever loses its innate ability to purify, because it's got this innate, because that's the only thing, because God says I've sent it down on high so it can purify, that you can purify with. So we hold that it is the only thing that will purify, and it's got to be in its original state. So what do we mean by in its original state? There are three things that you look at. The smell has not changed, the color has not changed, and the taste has not changed. So if the taste of the water has changed, if the color has changed, yeah, what was it, color, and the smell has changed, you can use it for other things, but you can't use it for worship. Yes?
Does it have to be all three conditions? So for example, if the water the colour changed, but it didn't smell or taste, then could you still do wudu with that?
Okay. If what we do is we look at what's changed it. Is it halal or haram?
Oh right, yeah.
Not halal or haram. Is it clean or is it filth? Because there are things that are graded as pure and there are things that are graded as impure. So if an impurity falls in, then no. If something pure falls in, if it changes, the color, no, you can't do wudu. For instance, milk. Milk is pure. If it falls in water, you can use it for other things. You can use it for cooking, you could drink it, you could cook with it, but you couldn't do wudu with it. Yes?
What about seawater?
Seawater, it's innately in it. It's not something that is found already, like, seaweed, not seaweed. It's not, no.
Algae, is it?
Pardon?
Algae?
Algae, yeah? Something that's like salt, it's innately found in the water. It's not been added. It's okay. It's like, the bedrock is muddy. So the water looks muddy. So the color has changed. But because the bedrock is innate, the water's flowing over it. Yeah, that's fine.
Excuse me, what is bedrock? I don't know that word.
It's what the water flows over. Underneath the river or the stream, sometimes there's grass growing or stones, and when the water flows over it, it looks like it's taken on that color. But when you scoop it out, it's not that. But for instance, if we've got water, milk falls in, which is pure, we can't use wudu, use it for wudu. If vinegar falls in, which is pure, it'll change the taste. Milk will change the color. Vinegar will change the taste. They can't be both are pure, but you can't do wudu with it. But yes.
Do you have a condition in regard to the amount?
We don't, because we hold that water has this innate thing.
So how wide is the affected area then? So like, say it fell in a massive lake, where?
No, the lake is totally different.
So the whole lake?
No, we're not talking about the lake. We're talking about with the lake. If the water is flowing, it doesn't affect it.
What about a bucket? So like
in
one
bucket.
drop of urine in a bucket?
In a bucket, no.
No, okay.
It's filth. Okay. Yeah. Drop of in a lake doesn't affect it. Okay. If the water is flowing, ma' al-jari doesn't affect it. Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
May I ask quickly about three things that come up a lot?
Yeah.
So we've got fluoride in the water.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Can you taste it?
If you gave me the two together, I would be able to taste it.
Yeah. Can you? But it doesn't. It's very difficult.
Right. Okay.
It hasn't overwhelmed it.
Right. The same with if you've got a water softener, it swaps the calcium for salt, and there you can just about taste it. So that would be no.
No. Our tap water.
Yeah.
I don't know about London water, but Birmingham water is okay. But tap water in this country is fine. Sheikh Kaif Al Mubarak, he's Dr. A Saudi Maliki Sheikh, he gave a fatwa that even recycled water, because it's recycled, it returns to its original state, because we hold that it has this innate God's put this quality that it's pure. And even science, if you go and look into it, it actually does, recycled water goes back to its original state. Does it? Yeah. But if rule of thumb, if one of the three has changed, Yeah, it can, as long as you know what's fallen into it is pure, it can be used for, washing or cooking or drinking. It can't be used for worship. For worship, it has to be pure.
So, because you mentioned, so the color has to change.
Color,
taste, and the smell. But let's say you have a large bucket of water,
yeah,
and one tiny drop of vinegar drops in. You wouldn't be able to recognize the taste, smell, or.
That's why we're saying that you need to. So if you can't taste it,
then it's still fine.
It's fine.
Even if it's filth.
Oh, filth, no.
It's a different story. Okay.
Filth, no.
Okay.
Filth, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Because keep in mind that what you're doing, it's an act of worship. Purification is an act of worship, and you're purifying to go in front of God. So what you do is you use the purest form that we have. So water in its purest form. There's a lot that can be, said about water, but you'll end up wasting a lot of time. Yeah? But if you keep, these three principles in mind, our, tap water is fine. You can purify yourself with it. The amount of fluoride, the thing that they put in swimming baths, what's it called?
Fluoride.
No, that won't do. Fluoride in the because you can actually smell it and you can taste it. The fluoride that's in our drinking water, unless you got a really good palate, it's very difficult to taste it. So the tap water for purification purposes is fine. Now go on. It's better you ask now than.
If you just come and wash your hands with soap,
yes,
you do your wudu.
Yes,
you can taste soap.
Yeah, wash your hands. Wash. Make sure that the soap
is completely off.
Completely off, because a note on soap, and any products that are used that are soap based or used for personal cleansing. You must remove any traces of those from you, because soap carries filth. It's not innately pure. Yeah. So inshallah, we'll cover it when we get to ghusl. That whenever you use it, you wash it off. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on water? Yeah. Tap water is fine. Okay. How the rest of the text is arranged is first we'll deal with the fara'id, the obligatory actions of wudu, then the sunan, then the recommended, and then we'll bring them all together. Then ghusl, of course, we're not going to do it. But I'll give you a demonstration if you want of wudu. And of tayammum, inshallah. Okay. The fara'id of wudu. These are verses 57 to 61. Now, I'm not going to go translate it, I'm just going to go through the commentary of it. Yeah? So what we've got is, with us, with the Malikiyah, we have 7 obligatory actions for wudu. Now, these are not in order that you will be, doing wudu. These are in order of the poem. Yeah. So the first is dulk. Dulk. When you wash your hands, what do you do? Scrub. No, not scrubbing is a bit hard. What do you do?
Rubbing.
Yeah. You literally pass one hand over the other. So, in English, what's the difference between the word dipping and washing? No, what does, if I dip my hands in water, what does it mean? Yeah, I've just put them in water and I've brought them out, pulled them out. Yeah? And if I say I've washed my hands, what does that mean in English? You've rubbed your hands together. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, that's the same the same meaning carries in Arabic. The word ghasl or ghusl, it literally means that you've washed. And ghums is you've put your hand in water. So this word dulk is to make sure that when you wash, you pass your hand over the limbs that you're washing. Yes.
And, what was that word again?
Dulk.
And how do I spell that?
D-A-L-K.
In Arabic?
Dal lam kaf. Yeah. Now, this is an obligation only if you have the ability to do it. So if you rely on someone else, to help you to do wudu, then it's according to your ability. But it's for most able-bodied people, it's an easy thing that it's a gentle rub. It's not a harsh rub. It's not a scrub. Yeah, gentle. Yeah. What you're doing is you're making sure that the water is touching the skin. Yeah. So that's the first obligation. The second is it's one continuous action. So from the beginning to the end, there's no gap. Yeah, it's a continuous action. There is another word for it. They call it mu'alat, but one continuous action. Again, you must have the ability to do it. Someone who doesn't have the ability to do it, the obligation for this will drop. Now, okay. Second, that was the second. The third obligation is the intention. Now, intention, you never make the intention specific. Write it in red, underline it. I'll give you an example. If I made the intention to make wudu for Salat al-Dhuhr, yeah? So, my intention was to pray Salat al-Dhuhr with it. Once I say Assalamu alaikum, my wudu is null and void. I know there are, scholars who debate this, that it's not something that breaks wudu, but the Prophet ﷺ said that actions are by intentions. So if your intent is specific.
So your intention should be to pray?
No, yeah, your intention should be as general. So the intention is always Rafa al-Hadith, or just to fulfill the obligation of wudu. That will suffice, because as long as your wudu doesn't break, you've got wudu. If you make it to do a specific action, then once that action is done, because that's what your intention was. So if you make the intention that I'm fulfilling the obligation of wudu, or to remove minor impurity, or the Arabic is Rafa al-Hadith, that will, as long as your wudu doesn't break, you're in the state of purification. It's not articulated. The intention is not said aloud. The place of intention is the heart. What's your name?
James.
James.
Yeah.
If James got up now and went and did wudu, would he have to, when he gets to the sink, does he need to make the intention to do wudu?
No.
No. Why, James?
Because you're doing the action. You're
Yeah,
already
because
on your
you
way
got up to do wudu.
Yeah.
Yeah?
So intention is more like.
You do not need to articulate it. But you need to know what you are doing. It's really important. You must know what you are doing. Yeah?
And also why you're doing it. So
Why you're doing it. Yeah. Because there's a very famous work. It's called Qutul Qulub. Food for the hearts. It's too thick volume. This thing, just in Arabic. It was written just to get the intention right. Yeah, but the thing is, don't waste too much time. Yeah, you just make sure that you know what you are doing. The reason why you've got up is because you're going to do wudu. Yeah, if you bring it to mind that it's to remove minor impurity just before you begin, it's fine. It's good. It's good habit to get into. Yes.
What if that starts becoming a barrier to prayer? Because there was one time there was a brother here, and he took near enough an hour to 2 hours, doing wudu, because he was like, "Oh, my intention wasn't right. I did it," and he said, "I've probably broken it," and he took like an hour and he wasted so much water.
Yeah.
It was like, bro, you just come and do the prayer because you're wasting so much time. Yeah. Has that now become so? Even though his intention might have been broken, because it's becoming a barrier to prayer, has it not been broken after a certain time?
Him doing it, because you see, if you listen to what the Prophet ﷺ told us, he said, actions are by intentions. You doing the action is proof that your intention is there. Yeah. You can say that the mind wanders, but you began with the intention.
Yeah.
And what we're looking at is we're making sure that you know what you're doing. If people get so stuck, it ends up becoming like a cirrhosis. That is that the right word?
Cirrhosis.
No, cirrhosis is not the right word.
Overthinking.
Huh? Psychosis. That's the word. That's the right word. Yeah, people. You don't. What you do is you get up, do wudu, pray. Yeah, but make sure that you do it properly. That's all you've got to do. As long as the limits are kept in mind, and that the obligations and the sunnah and the recommendations are there. Do it, pray. End of story.
So would you say it's pretty impossible to do something without an intention?
Yeah, it is. Because
you're never going to do anything without an intention.
Because why did you get up and go to the sink in the first place? Yeah. The classic example is that Imam Malik was asked about intention. Leave that. The ayah in the Quran, because we Malikis get a lot of stick from Hanafis because we make intention an obligation. You say, where's the evidence? Yeah. If you go to the ayah, Allah says, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ. Yeah. When you stand. We have this very famous Qadi from Baghdad about 1,000 years ago. His name was Qadi Abdul Wahab Baghdadi, and he put this accusation He says, look, we get accused of this. And he said, how I respond is ask them to go and learn Arabic. Because when Allah says, when you stand to pray, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسَلُوا, go and wash your face. You know, the whole ayah of wudu is, the context is when you get up to pray. So, because when you get up to do an action, that's your intention. It's like what James says, that, you know, when he got up to go to the sink, his intention was to do wudu. So even God makes it in the Quran, the context is when you get up to do that action, not when you're doing that action. Inshallah. So it's in the heart. You do not need to articulate it. If you do, it's good, but no one should hear it. It's not something that, you know, is said aloud. Because the adage is that, you know, two things that, you know, no one knows except you and God: fasting and your intention. No one knows unless you tell someone. Okay. Any more on any questions on intention? We're clear on that. Yeah. Okay. The fourth obligation is to wash the face. Now, what do we mean by the face? Is your natural hairline. You know, where your hairline begins, the whole hairline. I keep forgetting, you know, what's that in English, James?
What? Your earlobe?
No, not my ear.
No,
That's my
which
earlobe.
Which part of the ear?
This thing that hangs out.
I'm not sure what that one is.
No, anyway, can you see that? Yeah? Now, get your finger and put it next to it. Yeah? Now, you know where that finger begins? That's where your obligation of the face is. The ear is not an obligation to wash. So they call them the 4 pins. It's from there for your hairline, your chin, and, you know, there. If you put a finger there, yeah? But so less the finger. From there inwards. From there inwards. Yeah? From there to there. The whole face. Yeah? All of, you know, the folds, the wrinkles, under the nose, under the lips, all of them have to be washed and rubbed. Yes?
And in the madhab, is the beard included?
The beard depends on, it's like, you know, if your skin can be seen through your face,
Okay.
yeah, then the skin needs to be washed. If the beard is thick and long, then it's wiped over. Yeah, but if it's a short, a thin beard where, you know, the skin can be seen through it, then you have to wash it. If it is thick and long, then you wipe over the beard, and you have to, you know, put some water in. Yeah.
So, how far you showed, and I was looking here. Sorry, how far is the face? Like just to there?
Yeah, your chin, literally the chin.
Right.
Yeah, not because that's the neck, the chin. Yeah, so from your hairline, all of the forehead downwards. Not this. Yeah, all of the face round, and the chin, and under the eyes, the nose, lips. I mean, under the lips, everywhere, wherever the folds are. What you've got to do is all the surface of the face of the skin has to be washed, and that's where, you know, dulk comes in.
Would
Yes.
you say it's makruh to wash your ears?
Pardon?
Would it be makruh to wash your ears?
Shall I give you qadiyat? It'd be kufr. Because you're saying you know more than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can't wash your ears. You wipe your ears.
No, that's not yeah, I was going to ask.
Sorry.
I was told it was recommended to like wipe over ears with fresh water.
No, it's sunnah.
Yeah.
It's not an obligation to wash. We'll cover it. Yeah. The limit of the face, hairline, chin, everything in between, between the ears. Yeah. You wash it. Are we okay with the face? The hands, washing the hands. Now, from the tip of your finger, including the elbow, not beyond the elbow. Don't go, 4 fingers above. Not the Hanafi thing, no. Again, Qadi Iyad's opinion I've already given you. So,
sorry, just before that, so that opinion to go above, that comes from Abu Hurairah, doesn't it? That saying. So where does that come from? Like, because I know they say that
the Hanafis take it.
Yeah.
We don't.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, because what's your name, by the way?
Shuaib.
Shuaib. How the madhab understands is that we take fiqh from the mujtahid Sahaba.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So it's including the elbow,
Okay.
but not above.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. And what you do is you make sure that you know all the skin. That's where the dulk is included. And then just make sure that you know within the in between the fingers as well that you wash. Number 6 is wiping the whole of the head. Not some hair, because the opinions within Islam, we have a lock of hair, a quarter of the head. The Shia they just go like that. But what God says, wamsahu ru'usakum. Mahmoud, what does ra's mean?
The whole thing.
The ra's means head. Ra's means head. And when God says head, it means head. This is where when we were talking about the usul, that how God has laid down the ayat in the Quran. It's when God says a limb, it means a limb. We can't bring in an ahad, a singular narration to limit, make the ayat conditional. So when God says wipe the head, it means the whole head. We can't bring a hadith in that it means this much. Could I, if I just washed my cheek, would you say I've fulfilled the obligation of washing the face?
No.
So how is it possible that if I wipe a quarter of my head or a lock of my hair, it just won't do? And that's the Maliki argument that you follow the hukum that God has laid down when he says the whole head is for man and woman. Doesn't matter how long the hair of the woman or the man is. Yeah, the obligation is to wipe the whole head. So because we're dealing with the obligation is literally to wet your hands and begin from the beginning, from your hairline, and go back to the nape. That obligation is done.
Excuse me, sorry.
Yes.
When you have hijab, so if you're wearing hijab,
Yes.
and you started your work day, so you need to take wudu for the hair, and it's different. How do you then fulfill that obligation of wiping your whole head?
Wiping your whole head depends on where you're doing wudu.
Do you mean like outside?
Yeah, like when you're traveling.
Like if you have no privacy when you're doing
If you have no privacy, like it's like, say for example at work when you know.
Yeah.
Okay. There must be some privacy. Isn't there none at all?
Yeah, I suppose yes.
No, because the thing is that we don't have this thing, because there are a certain category of people that you can take your hijab off. Yeah. So if it's only the context, the country that we live in, it becomes difficult to follow, the well-known opinions. So a Muslim woman is not supposed to take off a hijab in front of, non-Muslim women. She's not supposed to. Yeah. In front of Muslim women, it's not a problem. Yeah. But because you've got to fulfill an obligation, then in front of women it wouldn't be a problem. In front of men it would be a problem. Then what you do is you look at your timetable. I mean, what time does the time for prayer finish? Can I fit it in when I get home, or where I can go and get privacy? You look at that way. What you do is you always try to fit in the well-known opinion before you go to a rare opinion. Does that make sense? Okay. Washing the feet. That's the 7th obligation. From the ankles to the toes. All of the whole of the feet. And again, you make sure that you rub. As to washing between the toes, it's not an obligation; it's a recommendation.
Sorry, just need to get
Sorry. Yeah. It's not a recommendation. I mean, it's a recommendation, not an obligation to between the toes. Okay. Any questions on the obligations of? Because we've done with the 7. Those were the obligatory acts of wudu. If you leave any of these out, your wudu will be null and void.
So what about wiping over socks?
Wiping over socks within the madhab?
Yeah.
No.
No.
We don't permit it.
No.
If you've got, leather socks, fine.
I heard that apparently, like army socks that are like or waterproof socks, they're okay.
I've been asked this, and I'm a stickler to, I just stick to what I know, and what the people of knowledge tell us. Leather socks, yes. Other socks, no. What you can, there is opinion from other madhabs that you could take. Yeah, if you're between up the creek without a paddle, yeah, there is rukhsa. You can do talfiq. You can take an opinion, but again, you need to know what you're doing. Yeah? And what you find is that, why are you wiping over socks anyway? If there's a reason, yeah? No, seriously, if there's a reason, you've got athlete's foot, so on and so forth, yeah? Then, if there's a reason, then do tayammum. Because if there's a medical issue, you can use which is a valid reason.
Okay.
Hmm?
Sure.
Yes.
About the continuing.
If you call me Sidi, is better.
Same.
I was told long time ago, never become a sheikh. Become a student of knowledge, and you will die a martyr. Yeah.
If I may.
Yes.
The continuous thing, I've heard you have to. It's like rule of thumb, as long as it takes a limb to dry.
Yes.
Say you're in a situation like the sister has.
Yes.
And you could do most of your wudu here.
Yes.
But you're going to be 10 minutes before you can do your feet or your head or whatever.
10 minutes is too long.
Okay. So
10 minutes is too long.
Continuous intent.
Yeah. 10 minutes is too long. In 10 minutes, you will have to begin again.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if it's worth pointing out that unlike some of that, the order I think is not required. So you could do most of your wudu here and then do your head at another time if you are not.
What you could do, what you can do is look. You would look at if it's this sister or any other sister. The madhab is not known for giving carte blanche opinions. The opinions are always specific to that person. Yeah. So if you found a situation where a sister would lose the prayer, yeah, I wouldn't give this opinion, but I would send it to someone who will give the opinion. Yeah. You could do things. Do you understand? Because the thing is a valid form of purification, yeah, but it's a complete form. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, when you're doing water purification, but you're not doing it complete, and then you're doing it, and then there's a big doubt. But if you use tayammum, it's complete. It will be the same with wiping over socks. Because the rule that the Prophet ﷺ gave us was da'ma yuribuka ila ma la yuribuk. That where there's doubt, leave, go where there's no doubt. Yeah? Tayammum would give you a full purification. I know someone who would give you that opinion, so I'll tell you afterwards his name. Yes.
So what would happen if you left out like an obligation by accident, like you forgot to wash your feet?
By accident, at the end of this section, he does cover it. You go back to it, as long as it's not 10 minutes. As long as you're still there. As long as you're still there doing it and you remember, you go back. As long as you've not prayed anything with it, whatever you've prayed will be null and void. Yeah? Okay. Yes. Okay. We're done with the fard. Yeah? We move on to the sunan, actions of wudu. Again, these are 7. Has anybody got any Jewish friends? Then, are they Hasidic? Or do you know if they're Hasidic Jews or what type of Jews they are?
Not quite sure.
No? Okay. No, because Hasidic Jews, because the first sunan is washing your hands of wudu. Yeah? That's the first sunan. You wash your hands before you put them in water, before you begin wudu. So you make sure your hands are clean. With Imam Malik, he doesn't care if they're clean already. He says wash them. Yeah. So you wash your hands and then begin. Yeah. With Hasidic Jews, is they have when they go to sleep, they have a bowl of water, a jug. I mean, a big. It's not a jug, but it's a big mug. Pint size with two handles and a bowl.
Okay.
Yeah. So when they get up, the first thing they do is to wash their hands before they touch anything.
Oh, we're supposed to do that as well. Like, isn't it recommended?
That's what I've heard.
One of my teachers told me.
What?
He was like, when you wake up in the morning, you should wash your hands. You don't know.
What? First thing before you get out of bed.
Like,
No, after.
Once you get
If
out
you do that,
of
that's
bed.
amazing, but no.
Yeah.
After you get out of bed, wash
Yeah.
it. I've heard that as well, yeah.
No,
Wash your hands.
but they have it right next to their bed.
It's quite good.
don't become Hasidic.
Okay, cool.
What you do, the recommendation is that you have a wash. When you do wudu,
Yeah.
when you get up, do wudu, rather than just wash your hands. Yes. Okay. So this is before you begin. Yeah. Because traditionally, what happens is you get a bowl of water, or a jug of water. If it's a jug, anyway, we'll leave that till we get to the recommendations. Traditionally, you would have a bowl of water, and you would spill some water onto your hands, and you would wash them. Yeah. So you would make sure that your hands were clean before you put your hands in the water, and is a sunnah. And again, it's up to the wrists, not including the wrists. That's the first sunnah. Now, the second sunnah is, when you wipe your head, is to return your hands back to the front. So if you've got long hair, you would, finish till you've wiped your hair.
Wait, what can you say that again?
If you've got long hair, male or female, it doesn't matter. So you would go back, yeah, and then you would put your hands underneath,
Yeah.
and then bring them forward, yeah. Now, if the head are long, you would wipe them till to the ends of your hair.
So you have to wipe them to the ends of your hair.
Ends of your hair.
And
Men-
no matter
men-
how long your hair
Well,
is.
men used to have plaits, by the way. My hair's gone, but at the time, the Prophet ﷺ used to have 4 plaits. He used to plait his hair. He had 4, and you would put them underneath, bring forward, and you would come because you're supposed to wipe your head, and then the hair on top.
Would you ever take the plaits out?
No, you don't. You don't. You just wipe over them.
Okay.
So in my, I would go like that.
No, what you do is you would go back, yeah, and then bring them back.
All right. So
That's it. Yeah. So the fard is to take it back. The sunnah is to bring it forward. Yeah. The third sunnah is to wipe inside and outside of your ears. So you'd put your what finger is this?
Index.
So your index finger inside and your thumb outside, and you wipe in between the folds as well. The fourth sunnah is to do mudmud, is literally to put water in your mouth and swirl it. So you put it in your mouth, you pass it to the left cheek, and I mean to the right cheek and the left cheek. Does not mean that you gargle. You've seen the man in the mosque. No, that's not sunnah. The sunnah is that you put some water in your mouth, pass it. Yeah, that's it. And the fifth and sixth sunan is to sniff water. So you put some water in your hand and you sniff it.
Why is this 2?
Huh?
Why is it 5 and 6?
Because it's one continuous action. Shall we say 5 is sniffing? Yeah? Number 5 is sniffing. 6th is blowing it out. Is that easier? Okay. Yeah? So you sniff it and then you hold your hand and it's not, it's not a big blow. It's just small. You blow it out. So sniffing water, 5. Blowing it out, 6. Now the 7th is that the sunan are in line with the fara'id. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like, you would begin with washing your hands, which is sunnah. You'd do mudmud, you'd swirl some water, which is sunnah. You'd sniff water, which is sunnah. You'd blow it out, which is sunnah. Then you would wash your face, which is a fard. Yeah? Wipe your head, which is a fard. Bring it back, which is a sunnah. And then wipe your ears, which is a sunnah. And then you would wash your feet, which is a fard. So it's in line. So you don't do, the fard actions first and then do the sunnah actions. Yep. Are there any questions on those 7? No? Okay. We move on to the recommended actions. Keep in mind that when we earlier on this morning we said that the recommended, what we say recommended might be sunnah or sunnah mu'akkada with others, but with us they're recommended. Yeah. What you've got to keep in mind is if you make sure that you do the obligatory, the wajib and the sunnah, it's good. The recommended are recommended. If you leave some of them out, it's not a problem. But try not to leave the sunnah out, inshallah. But don't leave anything out. Okay, the recommended are 11. 11. Yeah? We can make it 14 if you want. So the first one is saying Basmala. When you begin, you say Basmala. Not Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah. If you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it's not a problem. Yeah? But what do you find people, when we do things, when we begin something, what do we do? What do we say? Bismillah. Do we say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? We just say Bismillah.
So you actually say it out loud?
Yeah. Silently, to yourself, you should do it. Bismillah. Yeah. And this is when you begin. Yeah. Number 3. Oh. Actually, I need to go back to the intention. That's what I've just remembered. You know, the fard of intention. Keep in mind that, you know, when you're doing wudu, the obligation of intention will only be when you wash your face. That's when you would make the intention. Does it make sense? No?
It was intention by action. So
I know. But, you know, it's good to bring it to mind. If you do, that's when you make the intention.
Is that,
When you wash your face.
and are we supposed to consider that under fara'id?
It's a fara'id.
Okay. So when you wash your face, you have to make the intention.
No, that's when yes, that's the first obligation. The first obligation,
Yeah.
is the intention,
Yeah.
then washing the face.
Right.
So it coincides. Does it make sense? No?
The first obligation is good.
I know, in the poem is dul.
Okay, right.
In the I've jumped the gun. Leave it. You will have to make a mental note. Yeah. When we finish, I'll show you how. When we make wudu, I'll tell you what. It actually coincides. In practice, it coincides.
Okay.
In practice, it coincides when you wash your face.
Okay.
Yeah. Second, you know, where you're doing wudu should be clean. Should be a clean place. This is, you know, why it's a recommendation. You know, in work, college, whatever situation we're in, you know, sometimes it's not a clean place. Yeah. So it's a recommendation. Third is that, you know, you use little water. Now, don't take the Mauritanian opinion on this. Keep it in our context. Yeah. We open the tap. They can do a ghusl with a tin of water. You know, with a pint, they can do a ghusl. But again, it's the context that, you know, each country, each people, little or a lot is different. Yeah. But what you should do is, in brackets, why this is a recommendation is so we don't waste water. Yeah. So we don't waste water. The fourth recommendation is that, you know, we use a tap. Traditionally, you would have something in which you've got water. So if it was a bowl, it would be put on your right hand side, and if it was a jug, it was put on the left hand side. Why do you think that is?
Still overflowing?
Pardon?
Is it still overflowing?
No, because if it's a bowl, you're going to put your hand in it, and if it's a jug, you're going to pour from it.
So you pour into your right hand.
Yeah. So you're going to pour using, you know, your left hand, and the bowl, you're just going to put your hand in it, right hand. Number 5 is washing each limb twice and thrice. Because the obligation is just to wash once. To wash the limb twice and thrice is a recommendation.
Sorry, it doesn't mean twice and thrice. Thrice means 2 times, so why do I have to say twice before?
Because the recommendation, the mustahab, is to wash it twice. Yeah? So that might be enough for you. But if you wash it 3 times,
Okay.
that's That's good. So to wash it twice is a recommendation. To wash it thrice, 3 times is a recommendation. But don't wash it 4 times. Please don't wash it 4 times. Keep in mind qadiyyat. Okay. Number 6 is that everything, each action that you're doing, you always begin from the right. So when you're washing your hand, right arm, right foot. So you always begin from the right. The 7th one is a siwak, a miswak. If people tell you've got to use that toothstick. It's good, but we use toothbrushes. Use a toothbrush. Use toothpaste. Because Qadi Abdul Wahab Baghdadi, in his Ma'una, it's an amazing work. He says that the intent of the Prophet ﷺ is known. The reason why the Prophet ﷺ encouraged, stressed on dental hygiene. It wasn't just to use the stick. The idea was clean your teeth. And that's why you find that, in Maliki Fiqh, we don't make no difference to, in the month of Ramadan, we don't have this thing that, there's a certain time that you can't clean your teeth. The recommendation, the Prophet ﷺ said, do it if you can for each prayer. Yeah? So if you can brush your teeth, fine. If you're not home, or you're somewhere where you haven't got your toothbrush or toothpaste, use your finger. But the whole intent is that dental hygiene. Keep in mind that when you talking to someone else, when you get close, if your breath smells, they ain't going to. The whole intention is to make sure that your breath doesn't smell.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Does the miswak has any, is it only the physical cleaning, or does it contain the plant itself? Does it contain some kind of...
A lot of people tell us a lot of stuff. There are a lot of works that are, authored by great scholars on, the virtues of the toothstick, on miswak. But the underlying reason that our scholarship tells you, especially, Qadi Abdul Wahab Baghdadi, he's telling the whole reason is dental hygiene. The whole underlying reason is to make sure that, your teeth are clean and your breath is not smelling.
Yeah, I understand this. I mean, maybe the miswak contains any, antibacterial, maybe the tree itself, the branch from where is this? I just thought maybe...
Where we're going to get them here? I'm a very practical person.
I was just wondering if...
No, it may be. You get them, some people have, some shops sell them, vacuum-packed miswaks and... in Muslim countries where I come from, in Pakistan, they actually cut they're fresh from the tree, so the sap is still in there. Yeah, so it's fresh. So there's something there. But the dry stuff that we get here, I don't know. I just use a brush and toothpaste. It's easy. Yeah. But if you can, fine. Because what you've got to understand is at that time, that's what it was. Because when we know, the underlying reason for it, do we still need to? It's like, the Prophet ﷺ used to travel by a camel. Why?
No, you travel options.
No, because that was the fastest mode of transport. Yeah? What do we use now? We don't use camels. I got in the car, turned the key and came here. But I'm still following the sunnah. Using, the best form of transport that there is. That I can afford anyway. And it's the same with miswak and other stuff. It's that when we know, then fine, alhamdulillah. Yes, there is, I'm not denying that, in certain plants, there is, of course there is certain stuff, but in toothpaste, you can get antibacterial toothpaste as well. But again, the dentists have that's a different thing. But just keep in mind, whatever you use, you can use a miswak, you can use your finger, you can use toothpaste, you can use mouthwash, whatever. But make sure that your teeth and breath are clean. Okay. Number 8. To keep the order of the sunnah. So this is a recommendation that you keep the order of the sunnah. Number 9 is that, we've done this before, but again, this is how the poem comes. That the sunnah are in line with the wajib. We've done that before, haven't we? But, it's in the poem. It's a recommendation as well. Number 10 is that, when you wipe your head, don't begin from the back, begin from the beginning. Number 11, washing in between your toes. Are people okay, or do you need a break? Or yeah, okay. Hold on.
Why is washing in between toes not because if you didn't do it, you're not really covering the entire area.
Okay. I really don't know.
Okay, fine.
Because this I wouldn't say anyway. Acquaintance of mine, Wahhabi guy, said the hadith did not reach the imam. That's why he didn't. But the hadith did reach the imam, but it's still a recommendation. It's not a sunnah. It's not a fard. Because what you've got to understand is look at your toes. They're not separated. So when you wash them, you actually have to make an effort. Yeah. So that's why, because it's the whole foot is the obligation, but then to separate them, it's a recommendation. Well, why the wajib for the hand is because the hand is naturally not. You have to. It automatically. It will separate. Does it make sense? So, yeah. Now, If you want, I can give you a demonstration. And then we can have a break. Okay. Have we got some water? I've got wudu, but we'll make wudu upon wudu, which is not recommended.
Is it because it's wasteful?
Huh?
Is it because it's wasteful to do that?
Uh,
In general, I mean.
No, in general, it's that, if you've got it, why do you need to do it?
Maybe just
Pardon?
wipe away your sins. You accumulate.
Because, it's a joke of mine. It's not a very good joke because none of you will remember. Do you know we used to have a bank in this country called Al-Baraka Bank? Do you remember?
I remember it from other places. It's still ongoing.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, in this country it was big. A lot of Muslims in this country invested in it. It closed.
I think I heard something about that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, when people say it's, Baraka to do this, and I say Baraka Bank's closed. As I said, it's not a good joke.
It's not like Baraka didn't go with that.
Yeah, Baraka Bank is closed.
That's what the Umayyad state.
Yeah, it's closed. Okay. If you want to come forward.
Is this the Mauritanian way?
This is Iqbal's way. No. This is the Brahmi way. So, because it's on it's a jug, so we'll put it on our left. Yeah. So it's a sunnah. So Bismillah. Bismillah is a recommendation. Little water. And what you do is you just make sure that you do dulk in between. Now, it's big enough for me to put my hand in. So I'll put it on my left, right. Yeah, Bismillah. Now, first fard, intention. So, what's the intention?
The action.
It's my action. But if I want to, I'll bring it to mind. Yeah, to my mind. Raf al hadith. Yeah. So, you always try to, from the top of the limb. And you're rubbing, making sure. If you under the tap, you can do it like that. It's not a problem. But like this is better.
So you could not take it with your left hand and pull it over your right arm. You have to take it with the right arm.
No, what happens is that you never take water with your left hand if you're using this.
Okay.
So you will always do this.
Okay.
That's the traditional way.
But under the tap, yeah.
But if it's under the tap, you'll just put it. So you'll do that. The thing of that you always begin with the right, and because we're people of the right. That's what we want to be, don't we? We want to be people of the right hand. So whatever we do, we always begin and do with the right. So finish with this. Then for each limb, you take water. Whatever you wash. So whatever I've washed, I've taken water for. So to wipe the head, I'll take water. There should be moisture on your hand. So you begin from the front and take it back to the nape, then bring it back. Now, if my head, however long was, well, I'd bring it back.
If your hair was
If my hair was long, I'd just pull it.
okay,
Yeah, wipe over them.
so the whole all the hair. has
Yeah,
to be
all the hair.
So the hair
Yeah.
cannot be
Every
bun. It
string.
needs to be like
No, if it's in a bun, it's fine. But